Leadership is a vital phenomenon in all aspects of life, including the political, social, and the corporate spheres. As a leader, you are able to create a vision and move people in that direction. On today's episode, we'll be learning more about leadership and how to unlock the leader within you. Joining me on this set is Philip Mwangale, a leadership and governance expert who will shed more light on this topic and decode it. And I'm your host, Zipporah Umile. Karibu sana, Philip.
Asante.
We are
Thank
glad
you
to
for
have
having
you
me.
here.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Sawa sawa. So now let's talk about leadership. If you ask anyone right now randomly to pinpoint a leader to you, they'll obviously pinpoint maybe a church leader, a political leader, a CEO. Now my question is, does a leader have to have a title? Does one require a title to be called a leader?
Most of the time, and that is the confusion that we have across the leadership space, that leadership is mostly equated to titles, to positions, and to spaces that leaders operate in. But that is not the correct understanding of leadership. And I'm not the first person to define leadership. We have so many people who have defined leadership. But I would borrow a definition from a great leader, one who served in the military of the United States and served as the Secretary of the Defense, Secretary of the Joint Defense Staff of the U.S. And he says this, that leadership is about influence, and positive influence at that. So leadership is not just concerned about the position the leader occupies, the title that leader has. Leadership is about influence and positive influence. I like what you said when you're beginning, that leaders envision, and then the followers catch on to that vision. So the leader sets a vision, a destiny for the followers, and he charts a course that those who follow after them, try to catch up to. So that is what leadership basically is. And I must also distinguish leadership and management, because most of the time you would get people operating as managers, confused as leaders. So you have these two categories. You're either a leader or manager. Sometimes you have a manager who ends up exhibiting those attributes of leadership. Sometimes you have leaders who operate as managers. You seldom have great managers or good managers ending up as good leaders. But you could have a good leader ending up as a good manager.
And can a good leader be a bad manager?
Yes, very much so, because leadership is about training. You have to build capacity day in, day out. It's a process that I would call regenerative. So as you give out to the people that you lead, you are also getting or tapping from a source that builds that which you have given out. So you cannot give leadership from an empty well.
So what makes the distinction between the leader and the manager?
Now, the leader is a dealer in hope and reality. The manager...
I think I've seen such a quote somewhere, a dealer of hope. And
of
in
hope
fact,
and
I wanted
reality.
to ask you, what exactly, like if you can expand on that.
The leader sells hope to the people, and that hope is present in the vision that he has set for those that he's leading. So that hope is sold to the followers daily, telling the people that you lead that this is where we are going. And he is also a dealer in reality, because while you are casting a vision, you also have to help the people you lead appreciate where they are. And that appreciation helps you plan better. It helps you know what kind of tools, what kind of equipment you need, to get to the destiny you have. I would equate it to, going on a journey. So the leader decides and tells the people that this is where we want to go. We are going to Mombasa, for example. That is the hope that you have given to the people. But reality is that you do not have a vehicle. So you need to tell the people that we need a means of transport. And to do that, we need to get a few resources around us. We need to establish, how long the journey is going to be, what we are going to need along the way. And it is up to the leader to make sure that the people appreciate the length of the journey. They appreciate, their roles in the journey, and also appreciating that you get hurdles along the way. Now, contrasting that with management. Management is about looking at those realities and using the same term, managing those realities at the present. So management is less likely to deal with or to be preoccupied with the vision. Though in most cases, management has to look at the vision, but management is most likely dealing with the mission.
The mission.
Yes, what are we doing to get there? Yes, the leader is looking at both things. This is where we are going, and this is what we are doing to get there. The manager is mostly preoccupied with what are we doing to get to where we are supposed to be.
Now, on that point that you've given between the leader and the manager, if you take a look at our current crop of leaders, where would you place them? Because you've said something that has reminded me of some things that some political leaders have told us before, Tunaenda Kana and such things. Where would you place them?
I refrain from calling some of them leaders, even though they have influence, but most of the time it is not positive political influence. One individual, an author who has written so much about leadership, called Dr. John Stanko. He has authored a book called Too Many Leaders But Little Leadership. And that is the subsisting situation we have. Even at present in Kenya today, we have so many leaders, but offering little leadership. So we have people who are preoccupied with what I would call positional equity, what a certain position portends for them, the trappings of power, the trappings of the title, rather than offering leadership. So I'm hesitant in calling them leaders. I think
are they more managers?
No, some of them are not even managers. Some are masquerading as leaders, even though they are occupying leadership positions. So you may actually occupy a leadership position, but you are not offering leadership.
Wow.
That is the sad reality of our day, that we have people who are occupying leadership positions, but not offering leadership.
Leadership.
Yes.
So what distinguishes between a good leader and a bad leader, or just a leader?
First, from the definition of leadership, a good leader must be able to, envision, must be able to dream. So if you're not giving the people you lead a vision, then you probably are not a good leader. Number two, the bit about appreciating reality, you must be in the present. You must be present in the moment, so that you are not just caught up in the vision and forgetting that there are things that are realities of the day, and that is a pitfall that has caught up many leaders, because most people get preoccupied with the vision, and they are so excited that this is where we want to be, and they live in the future. And leave their followers, in the present. So you have people who, leadership orphans in that sense. Number three, and which is a very important quality, is the fact that a good leader must be growing. A good leader must have growth. So you can't call yourself a leader because you were born one, or because you identified in 2005 that you are a leader, and you have done nothing to build your capacity around leadership. Because leadership in itself is the capacity, but you need to have content, the leadership content. So growth is a very important aspect of good leadership. The fourth thing that I would call a good quality is a people management aspect. Because for you to be a great leader, you can't lead objects. Objects are managed. People are led. So if you do not have good relationship skills with the people that you lead, then you're likely to suffer in your quest and journey of leadership.
Maybe expound more on the relationship skills that you mentioned, because I think it's very important, because some people, leaders, make the mistake of micromanaging people. So where do you draw the line between micromanaging and leading these people in the way that you want them to lead?
One of the greatest challenges of leaders, and not just leaders, not a preserve of leaders, I think human beings as a whole, is failing to appreciate our temperaments, or what people refer to as personalities. So the leader must know what their temperament is, because
the temperaments of his followers or her
no,
followers?
their own individual
okay.
individual temperament, because that is important in this sense, that when you are leading people, you must understand them. And for you to understand people, you must have first understood yourself, because while we are unique in our own individual senses, I mean, we are part of this fabric that is humanity. So there is really not much aside from those unique aspects that distinguishes us from each other. So for you to understand people, you must have understood yourself. So if you're looking at people's temperaments, you must know what your temperament is. And people's skills is really about accommodating people, and having people also get to accommodate you. So if you have followers that are strong in particular aspects, or they work in a particular way, you must understand how they what makes them tick. And so if you have not understood your temperament and what weaknesses or areas to overcome in you have, then you'd really struggle. Because while you may think that you're making headway, you may be stepping on people's toes, and sometimes necks, and that means you're really breaking them.
You're breaking them.
Yes, so that is a very important aspect.
And are there temperaments that are better as leaders and other temperaments that are not? I have to ask this.
I have heard and read so that you have certain temperaments that are better leaders, but I think it is the predisposition of particular temperaments. So that if you have cholerics, for example, who are dominating.
They're the ones you must do as they say.
Yes, and people consider those kinds of people good leaders. But sometimes cholerics do not make the best leaders. In fact, some of the worst leaders we've had in history have been, cholerics.
Cholerics. That includes the dictators.
Yes, that includes the dictators. So, in fact, dictators or cholerics make the best dictators.
So for cholerics,
yes.
there's a problem.
No, I'm not saying they have a problem. If you understand what areas need to be overcome in all these temperaments, whether you are choleric, whether you are melancholic, phlegmatic, you need to understand what you should overcome. So you have cholerics that do not have a problem with being dominating. So they, depending on the environment they are bringing, because these temperaments are a response largely, aside from what is inborn, they are responses to our environments, responses to how we relate to people. So there are some cholerics who do not have an issue. That is not it is not something they need to overcome. And there are cholerics who are not as proud. You have melancholics who are not as reserved as others. So
what about sanguines? Because they say sanguines are just happy-go-lucky. They seem, they never seem serious with anything. Can they be leaders?
Yes, I mean, all of these temperaments make good leaders. So it is about sharpening that leadership aspect. I have friends who I would call rocky sanguines.
Are they like the hardcore sanguines?
Well, they are up and about, but they are very good leaders because they have managed to hone the skills of leadership. And really, that is what it is about, that leadership is developed.
So it doesn't matter your personality, as you've had your temperament.
It doesn't really matter.
So as long as you know how to kind of manage both the strengths and the weaknesses, you get to go.
Yes.
Now, you talked about something which, of course, I was going to ask you. There's this debate that people ask: are leaders born or are they made?
Some leaders appear to be born.
Appear to be. What do you mean by that? I have to underline.
What I mean is, there are certain individuals who do not really struggle, to exhibit leadership, and they come out of the shell pretty fast. And I would say that is largely because most people are given opportunities to lead, and that attribute is nurtured at a very young age. There are people who fall into leadership positions and then, discover that they have certain skills that can be grown around leadership. And so that is honed and perfected over time. So I can't say leaders are either, born or made.
So
I would say leaders are developed. Leaders are grown.
So there's nothing like it being born or being made.
No, you can be born a leader. I mean, you can be identified as a leader at a young age. You're leading children in play and whatnot. And you get to adulthood and there's nothing.
By the way,
there's nothing leader-like
what happens? What happens? Because what happens with that? Like you start off well as a good leader. If you are prefect in school, leading leading groups and all, but you grow up and then you become sort of reluctant. You're just there, like.
Let me use the allegory of a chick and chicken. So when you have an egg, before it becomes a chick, there is an incubation period. If the incubation fails, then that egg is lost completely. After incubation and hatching, you have a chick that also has to be nurtured. It has to be given warmth, it has to be given food and water, and then it grows into a fully mature chicken. And leadership takes, those same stages. So once the leadership quality has been identified, there has to be incubation. You have to go through a process of making the individual understand that there's something in them that is, invaluable. And then that process has to be, has to grow into, it has to be hatched. And so the leadership qualities have, to come alive. They have to be set in motion. They have to be applied. And then now you have, if you call it full-blown leadership. So it is the nurturing and the growth. And I must insist on growth, because without growth, the leader who was identified remains that. And you retreat into your shell and lose those attributes completely.
So you might actually even be born a leader, but if you don't put it to practice along the way, like practice, or bring out your leadership skills, you might as well just remain.
It will disappear. It's I would call it leadership atrophy. Just like muscular atrophy. If your muscles are not in use over a long period of time, they will just be that piece, chunks of flesh. So leadership also takes the same form. If it is not put to use, then it is of no use.
Now, if you look at our history books, people whom the whole world reveres, the likes of Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, and the likes, people look up to these people. These people made such a huge impact on, lives across the world.
Yes.
What does it take for one to move from just being a regular person to being this icon? Global icon.
Yes. One of the themes that runs through those individuals you've mentioned is the fact that these were people who were willing to die. They were willing to make,
not
physical death. I'm not talking about spiritual. I'm talking about physical death. They were willing to die. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Lincoln, and on the African, most of the time we do not mention the African leaders.
Why
but on the African context, you have Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso. You have Nelson Mandela. No, not Kenyatta.
Wasn't willing to die.
Unless he had a cousin.
I thought at one point he was.
No, I don't think he was. He was at that level. Yeah, but the theme that runs through is the willingness to die, the willingness to make sacrifices, which really is the point. Most of the time, we take so much time to teach leaders how to live well, rather than how to die properly. Because yes, and it's a tough journey. The greatest, no one wants to die, and that is why the greatest leaders must learn how to die properly. Because if you have not died to self and died to your passions and your own individual visions, then you cannot lead people. You cannot really lead people. So if you cannot make great sacrifices, then you probably not get to the place of great leadership. And it's not really about setting yourself up to be identified as a global figure, a global leader. Those people you mentioned, they didn't even think about being known. Martin Luther King Jr. was preoccupied with, social justice. That was it. I mean, he didn't even want, the fame or the glory that came with leadership. But you have individuals in this age who are preoccupied with the fame. They are preoccupied with being known. And so you have people making so many mistakes along the way because their preoccupation is not in offering leadership, it is in seeking fame and the trappings that come with those things. So if a leader is not willing to die, willing to make sacrifices, they will probably just be leaders or just end up being a good leader, not a great leader.
Not a great leader. And is that what is happening in our society right now? Because most of these great leaders you're mentioning, they're people in the past. Well, there are good leaders right now, but we cannot really place them in the same category as the other leaders.
Yes.
Does it mean that we as a people have become more self-absorbed and no one wants to give the ultimate, the ultimate sacrifice they need to give as a leader?
And what you mentioned is important, that we have become self-absorbed. And really, I think the issue is greed and selfishness. I think we are more selfish than we are selfless. So you have individuals watching after their own affairs as opposed to the affairs of the body corporate or communities. These people are mentioning, and it's not to say that we do not have good leaders now, great leaders now, but they are few and scattered. So if we dealt with the selfishness, we would probably have people exploding in the arena of leadership. There's an aspect called utu. That's Swahili.
Utu?
Yes, utu, ama ubinadamu. The South Africans call it ubuntu. And that is largely missing in our society today, in the African context at least. That you have people who can, be human, the humanity aspect. Because if you lose the utu, if you lose the humanity aspect, then you will be concerned with what I was talking about, positional equity. What is it that I can get for myself? What is it that I can get for my people, for my family, as opposed to what is it that people can get from me? So I think that is what has brought us to where we are today.
Now, Kenya is heading to its general election,
Yep.
and we have aspirants who've already, expressed their interest, and we know there are those who will still come up.
Yes.
Now, my question is, you find some people who are very genuine, that they are vying for particular seats, and they seem that they're really going to, make change or help the people.
Yes.
But once they get in there,
Yeah.
they seem, to be dormant or rather absorbed into the rotten system. How can we prevent these, cases of people going in there, very committed to helping its people, but once they're there, they forget about everything?
It's not just one issue. I think it's multifaceted. Number one, you have people who have the wrong motivations. I mean, I've seen a joke doing rounds that do not say you're not corrupt or you're not a thief. You lack the opportunity. So it's the opportunity, yes. So once your motivations are wrong, it does not matter that you have gotten into a good system or a bad system as ours is. I mean, you still, your real self will still come out. So there's that aspect. Number two, we also have a system that is too rotten to accommodate freshness, because we have structures that have matured over time, corrupt structures that have matured over time, such that just a lone individual operating in these structures will be suffocated. So you're talking about parliament, you're talking about the executive, you're talking about all these other institutions that are so suffocating to the righteous person, so suffocating to the man of integrity. It is not to say that a person of integrity cannot thrive in these setups, but one of the things that needs to be done by people of integrity is to count the cost. And we are still talking about sacrifice here. What is it that you believe in? And are you willing to make even the ultimate sacrifice for the things that you believe in? We have had people in our history, and some of them are living now, people who paid the cost. they stood for something, and I mean, nothing could bend them. Even when they faced intimidation, they faced violence, they faced threats, and some of them even lost their families. Most of the people who have stood up for what is right and paid the cost are living, in abject poverty. That is the unfortunate bit about our society. So, what is the cost that you're willing, to pay for what is good? And most people are not willing, to pay that cost. So you have people, good people, getting into leadership positions, for example, and you are faced with those threats and intimidation. Sometimes it doesn't even go that far. I mean, you're just threatened with a little cash. Money is threat enough to sway you. So it is the grounding that is important. The person of integrity must be grounded in integrity. Integrity is not just a value that you put on as a cloth every morning. It must inform your life. It must power your life. So if that is not the case, then you're likely to see that continuing, that you have good people getting in, and then they change. Sometimes you have bad people masquerading as good people, just because they want to get certain positions. They get in and they go back to factory settings.
So for people who are interested in those political seats, they should go in there, ready to pay the price, even the full price.
Yes, and back to appreciating reality. Because for you to count the cost, you must know what you're building. You must know what it is you are paying for. So knowing that you are going into a rotten system is very important. Because if you're naive and you go in expecting that you're going to meet very nice people who will encourage you to stand for what is right, then you will really suffer. You must know that you're going into a den of wolves, and that is very important. It will tell you when to run or when to stay put. So appreciating reality aside from grounding is also very important.
Now, for a young person watching who, they want to exercise their leadership potential, maybe they've always thought about starting an organization or leading a group of people, but they don't believe in themselves, or they don't think they're born leaders. They're still in their shell. What would you advise them?
Shells can only be broken.
Nice one.
And they can either be broken from the inside or from the outside. And back to the egg analogy, when an egg is broken from the inside, I heard somebody say it is a good thing, it gives life. When it is broken from the outside, it kills. The egg is lost. So it would be better that you break out from the inside. You identify that you have certain qualities and come out confidently. Start making confident steps or confident advances to applying leadership. And that does not mean that you need a position. Even leading your own life is the greatest step of leadership.
Yeah, how can one do that?
Very small steps. In the military, one of the things that is driven into the civilian who would later become a soldier is to take away that civilian aspect. And the civilian aspect is really about eliminating randomness, eliminating having this laissez-faire attitude. So leadership is about leading yourself, and it begins with very small things. Waking up in the morning and laying your bed before.
Just making your bed before you leave
making
your
your bed. When in high school, in the high school I attended, just
you
laying
seem
your
to have
bed.
come from a very smart high schooler.
Well, it was let me not. I give credit to my high school, but it's a great school called FSK. So
you're trying to hide that.
No, I'm not hiding it. It is a great school. Friends School Kamsinga is still a great school. So one of the things that was very important was laying your bed in the morning. If the prefects would get to do their patrols and find creases on your bed, that was punishable, because how do you have creases on your bed?
And this for guys, I thought it was, it's only ladies' school that.
And I think that is the problem. We think that certain aspects of discipline, are preserve of certain gender, which is very wrong. And talking of that, for men, I hear about and it's a joke that goes around that men should not waste water by taking showers frequently.
They don't want to bathe. They're avoiding
Yeah, but
bathing.
you know, those little aspects, it goes beyond, you know, grooming. It goes beyond laying your bed. But mastering, getting a mastery of your own life, that is the greatest accomplishment of leadership. So for the young person out there who feels like they need to step out in leadership, start by applying that leadership in your life. We get to hear this cliche about African timekeeping. It's something that we have gotten so accustomed to. And I think one of the greatest attributes of leadership is mastering time also. So if you cannot master your own time, then do not think that you will help people master their own time too. So those very small things, break out from within rather than being exposed to the vagaries of life, and that makes sure that the shell is broken from without, and it could injure you. It could,
you could be injured as well.
Because if and what I mean by that is you might get to some setups that will only expose the leadership qualities in you after you have been injured emotionally. After you've gone through a crashing, and but you don't need to get there. You can begin by making your own small steps.
If the director can allow me, I have a few quotes here that I wanted to read out, so that our guests, will help us expound on them. Read a few of them. There's a quote here by John Maxwell. He said, "The pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, the leader adjusts the sails." Yeah.
And that is very true. And John Maxwell has contributed a lot to the leadership space. And that last bit, adjusting, I would borrow a quote from the Greek. And the Greeks say that if the sails are giving you trouble, if the sails on the boat, that is, are not complying, then you take to the oars. So, I mean, the sails are those, the masts that help you control the wind. They harness the wind to make sure that the boat has direction. Yes. So if the sails are not complying, then use the alternatives, the oars.
What are the oars?
The oars are those. Let me use
layman's language, tafadhali.
paddles. Let me use paddles. I think paddles are more understandable. Because if you concentrate on adjusting the sails, I mean, the sails can get torn. I mean, so what will you sink just because you can't paddle your way across? So the greatest attribute of leadership is being able to adjust. And it is not a great plan if it is not changeable.
If it's not changeable.
If it's not changeable, yes. So, I mean, if you are a leader and you're setting in motion a great plan, then you must have accommodation for change, because you'll meet obstacles that are unforeseen. You would meet people who are very difficult to deal with.
Actually, that's a big problem in leadership.
Yes. So if you have not factored in those variables and so many, because leadership has so many moving targets, and you can't be fixated on one target and claim to be exercising leadership. So I agree with Maxwell that the leader must be adjusting, and adjusting does not mean that you are too fluid, so that you are swayed to and fro by the wind. It just means that you have a certain sense of grounded flexibility. Just like the palm tree. I mean, the palm tree flourishes in certain environments that are too windy. I mean, they face so many breezes. But the palm tree has a stem that is strong yet very flexible. While the wind and the breeze might push against the palm tree, palm trees hardly break.
They hardly break, because you can even see some of them bending, but they will never break.
They will not break.
So there's another quote here. It's by an anonymous person. It says, "He who thinks he leadeth and has no following, and has no one following him, is only taking a walk."
Yeah, it's true. You can't. You must lead people. You're only a leader because mean, there are people who are feeling or they're feeling led, or they're actually being led. So, and that does not just mean that you know, you have not intentionally decided to lead. It's that sometimes could be that you are in a position of leadership, yet the people you're supposed to be leading are, you know, are left behind. So you must make sure that you have people with you all the time, and that must be intentional.
Then there's one here by the last one, John F. Kennedy. He said leadership and learning are indispensable to each other.
Yes, and that is very true, because, as I've said, leadership is about growth. Leadership is about development. So if you're not growing, if you're not developing yourself, then you would experience stunted growth as a leader. And my encouragement to leaders out there and those who are aspiring to exercise leadership,
Right.
I mean, read a little. We have so many resources, so much resource that is out there. And in this technology age and digital age, you cannot afford to be ignorant. You cannot afford to be an illiterate or an ignorant leader. You must always be studying. I mean, study. Most of the time, I think we have relegated studying to passing exams. So if you're not, reading up on exam, then you have no incentive to gather knowledge. But the greatest incentive for the leader is that growth. It is very important. I mean, challenge yourself to read a book, at least a book.
At least a book in a month or something.
Yeah,
if you're beginning
yes,
with this.
And it must be something that is really building you up. So you must, and you know, a leader has to be a step ahead of you know, those that he's leading. So if you're not a step ahead even in knowledge, then there is no way you will tell yourself you are dispensing wisdom, you know, to the people. And as I conclude on that point, as relates to knowledge, leadership is about the leader getting the knowledge, synthesizing the knowledge, and repackaging it as either revelation or wisdom to the people that he's leading.
All right. Wow, those are very, you know, great points that you've given us there. I believe those were your last words, or you have last words to share with you know, the person watching, especially a young person. A young person, because the show is basically empowering young people to be able to, and on this particular show, to bring out the leadership potential in them.
For young people, I would still insist on the aspect of growth and education, because ignorance has no reward. So if you just seated there and you expect that, I mean, leadership will fall on your lap, or because you have been given a certain position, and it may be as small as you know, being a firstborn in your family. It may be as you know, as little as being given certain roles in your household, or in a school setup, or in a church or community setup. It may be that small. But you must make sure that you are growing daily. You must make sure that there's something being added onto your capacity. You do not need to squander the opportunity of leadership that you've been given at whatever level. So build your capacity. I must insist on that. Build your capacity. Grow and develop yourself as a leader. And also identify, keep in touch with yourself. Identify who you are. Identify the stages of growth that you have taken, because that is the only way you will identify whether you are making progress or not.
Now, lastly, could you just, you know, tell the viewer about, you know, what you do? I believe you do training, such thing, leadership. What, you know, how can they access you as well?
Okay, so what I do is I establish order out of chaos, and that has many facets. I am a lawyer by training, but a leadership and governance consultant by deployment. So aside from the law, I also consult on leadership and governance. I train leaders, I train institutions and organizations. I also do governance audits, whether it is in businesses or corporate institutions. So the establishing order out of chaos is both for corporate individuals and individuals, human individuals. So that is what I do basically. I help people become better versions of themselves.
So how can people reach out to you? Maybe you want to share handles or?
Yes, I am on Twitter as wisdom_portal. So it's Philip Mwangale, but the handle is wisdom_portal. I'm also on Facebook as Philip Mwangale, both the account and the page. I moved out of Instagram, so I'm not on Instagram. No, I think in this age we are scattered across these platforms, and we lose effectiveness.
If you're scattered all over,
you definitely lose effectiveness, because I mean, you're on the rush to post here, post there, follow up here on this platform. So I think, and again, that is a problem that we have in this age. It is good to identify one thing and then devote your energies to that. Yeah.
All right. So that has been Philip Mwangale, leadership and governance expert. He's been able to share, a lot that I believe you've been able, to capture, and you are able to apply it in your life. Remember what he said. Apart from learning or knowing what it is to be a leader, or even being born a leader, you need to put it to practice, so that you may become the full-blown leader that you are meant to be. Thank you so much for staying with us. I've been your host, Zipporah Umila. Let's see each other in the next episode. Bye.